Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. This week I'm bringing you a free video from my upcoming course called Watercolor Florals for Graphic Design. In the course, I take you through all the steps on how to paint watercolor florals, digitize them, and even sell them online. So this is a sneak peek at the upcoming class. The class opens officially next week, but for now you can dig in, see if it's for you by starting off with painting 4 simple style watercolor florals. I've also created a clickable list of supplies that you can go through, you can pick up and prepare before the class officially opens next week. So without further ado, enjoy this video from the course on how to paint 4 loose style small watercolor florals. In this video, we're going to kick things off by creating some small supporting flowers to add that texture and shape variety to our future arrangements and bouquets, and then we'll move on to our larger flowers afterwards. So we'll get a good handle on the process and kind of make things more complex as we move forward. So the small supporting flowers that we're going to be creating in this video are our Lavender and our Angelica Flower, or any other flowers that you'd like to create. I'm just going to walk you through my process for creating these ones, and then we're also going to talk about just creating flowers from scratch, from memory, because I personally prefer the whimsical, more loose style, and there's a lot more give with what you can get away with and what you can experiment with. Unless you're planning to create a super realistic flower specific floral kit, you can really experiment a lot and have a lot of fun and really get creative with your own kit if you kind of stay in the more looser realm with your florals. So this is our Lavender and our Angelica, and even though Lavender is purple, I realize this, we are still going to apply our color palette to this flower, which is totally fine. This is your floral kit. You can do whatever you want with it. So definitely feel like you have a lot of creative freedom here, because you really do. So I'm going to move this aside for now. I also have my iPad right in front of me with a picture of real lavender, and I am looking at that as I'm working and just borrowing from our color palettes as I work as well. So we're just going to get started with this one. We're going to do our Angelica, and then we'll do some freehand flowers too. So these ones are all kind of our smaller florals. So for the Lavender, I like using a slightly larger brush. I've got a number 6 right here, and I'm going to start by grabbing my lighter color. You kind of always want to start with your lighter color first, because then you can build color and you can get darker on top, but you can't really get lighter on top once you have your darker colors down. So that's my recommendation. So I'm going to grab my really light orange right here, and with the tip of my brush, my number 6 right here, we're just going to create a cluster of just the paintbrush tip shape right here to create our Lavender. And you can move it around a little bit if you want thicker ones, and I'm leaving space between them so I can add color on top of them later on. And as you move upward, you want to get a little bit smaller as you go. So I'm just going to drop these in and then do it like a small cluster right up here. And I like putting my color in first, and then we'll draw our stem afterwards. That way we're not putting green with our orange. You don't want to get a really ugly color right there. So we're going to let this dry slightly. We don't want it to dry all the way, because once we put other color on top, we really want those pretty blends. These ones are already starting to dry, so I can drop color on these ones, but this one's a little wetter. So I'm going to wait until this one dries just a little bit more. So I'm going to grab my medium kind of red orange right up here and just drop some extra color. Let me make sure I get enough color on the tip of my brush. And I'm going to let this dry. Okay, it's a little drier, so I can add some more color to it. I actually think I want to put a small cluster right up here just to make it a little bit longer. I'm going to grab my medium orange and just put a small one up here, and maybe drop a little bit of color on it, extra dark. All right, and now we can bring in our stem. So I'm going to grab my number 0 brush for this, and I'm going to use the second one right here. So grab some color on the tip of my brush. You can bring it over here just to see what it looks like before you pull it. I want some extra color. All right, so I'm just going to draw a line all the way up, but I'm going to break it where the color is. That way I'm not passing a green all the way through this pretty orange. So I'm just going to start down here Okay, so that is our lavender, and you can create a bunch of different ones, different shapes, different sizes, just to add that variety, so we have those options later on. So that is our lavender. For our second flower, we're going to create this Angelica flower. So you can see we've got a bunch of flowers in the foreground, and then they all kind of branch together and come together as it meets the stem. So we're going to paint our flowers first in our little cluster, and then we're going to start with light and build up to the dark, and then we'll draw in our stem and finish it all off. So I'm going to grab my number 4 brush, and we're starting one more time with our light orange, and I'm just going to create those clusters kind of randomly around, and I'm just basically stippling with my brush, and I'm changing the angle here and there just to create variety, visual interest. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry. All right, and now I'm gonna come in with the same brush, my number 4, and grab my medium color. And I'm not going to cover my orange where it is right now entirely, but I'm going to grab kind of like corners and middle parts and edges and add some color there just to create some depth and more color variety. And this will make your eye believe that there's tiny flowers instead of just dots. All right, I'm gonna let that dry again. Okay, so now we're gonna go in with our smaller brush. So I've got my number 0 right here, and we're gonna grab the darkest color. We're gonna drop a few more dots on there. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry once again. Okay, so now we are going to create our stem and kind of the branch look off of these flower clusters. So I've got my number 0 brush again because we're gonna create a nice delicate stem. And I'm grabbing my middle green this time just to change it up a little bit from our lavender. And now I'm going to start the stem a little further down and then have everything connect. So I'm gonna bring it to like right here. Make it a little darker so you can see it. And then I'm just going to start bringing a stem from each flower cluster. And if you, like this flower cluster, if it can't reach this point right here without passing through another flower, you want to stop it short before it does that, and your eyes will visually make up for the rest of the stem being there without making it ugly, you know, bringing it through the flower. Okay, and then because these ones are more in the foreground, you can go over it one more time if you want to add a little extra depth. And that will just make your line a little bit darker if you do a second pass after it's already dry. Okay, so that is our Angelica flower, and now we're going to move into some freehand flowers, just some small supporting flowers that really make bouquets and arrangements really come to life. They're awesome because they don't have stems attached to them, so you can kind of place them wherever you need a little extra filler. So I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to grab a smaller sheet of paper and we're going to walk through those. Okay, so I've got my watercolor paper right here, and we're just going to freehand some smaller flowers, and I just want to walk you through my kind of process for that. So I'm going to start with my medium orange over here, and this is a number 4 brush, and I'm just going to create like a 5-petal flower. So kind of looks like a star, and you don't have to color it all the way in if you don't want to. That actually adds a little bit of extra texture to it. And I can come back and grab, you know, my lighter orange if I want to add some extra or different colors to some of these petals just off the bat. You can see it's just super loose. I'm not really thinking about it at all. I'm just painting 5 petals, and then you can come in before it dries and just add a little extra color to the edges. You want some additional blends, and then obviously you want to change up the color a little bit. I'm going to grab my darker color right here, and it's just nice. The more options you have, it just gives you way more options later on. So, and these ones are so easy to make, you know. So don't feel like you need a reference for everything that you do here. It's totally okay to just work from memory or just experiment and be creative with it. You also want to consider when you look at a bouquet, not all the flowers, when you look at them, are facing forward. Some of them are kind of facing off to the side. So make sure you include some of those too, so you have those options later on. So that would be like something like this, and definitely feel free to look at reference photos if you want to get more specific on your shapes or the size of your petals here. Let me drop in some different color here. I'll do one more of these, kind of a lighter color facing the other way. Okay, I'm going to let these dry and then we'll drop in the centers of these, and then we will do one more style of small flowers. Okay, for these centers, I like using the really dark color that we have way over here in our palette, and I'm going to use a number 2 brush for this, and you're just going to stipple those in, and this will create a lot of extra contrast. And if your colors feel a little bit muted after they dry, don't worry about that at all. Once we get into Photoshop, we can enhance the vibrancy, the contrast, all of that. So we can always make changes later on. All right, so I'm just going to stipple these in the center so they look sweet and delicate. And then over here, you kind of want to create a half circle with your stippling so it looks like it's on the side or facing sideways. That will just help your eye to interpret that this is a sideways facing flower. And I'm going to let these centers dry, and then I'm going to go over them one more time just to add a little bit more depth and add more contrast, because it'll be a little bit darker when I go over it a second time. All right, I'm going to grab my number 0 brush for this. As I get really dark on the top and more detailed, it's nice to move to a finer tip brush, just so you can see all those small details, and you can see how just adding some extra darker dots on top of our other ones really adds to the depth and just contrast of these flowers. Okay, so we're going to do one more quick style, and I've got my number 4 right here. So we're just going to do like mini daisies basically. So I'm going to grab my medium orange right here and pull out a lot of petals. Like right here we had 5 petals. So these ones are going to, because they're similar to a daisy, we're just going to pull out a whole bunch of them. And then drop in some extra color if you want to add variety around the center point, or if you want to add variety to the different petals. It's like if I can start with my super dark and move into my medium and grab some light along the way. And same thing for this one, you want to make sure you have those side facing flowers. It just really helps when you're creating those bouquets or arrangements later on. So pull these out. All right, I'm gonna let these finish drying, and then we'll drop those centers in one more time. All right, so same thing we did before. I've got my number 2 brush. I'm gonna grab this dark color right here and just stipple in those centers. All right, I'm gonna let those dry, and then I'm gonna go in with my number 0 brush and make those finer details like we did before. So number 0 brush, grab your color and stipple right on top. Okay, so those are some whimsical kind of flowers from memory that we created, some small supporting flowers, and then we also have our lavender, which definitely feel free to make a whole bunch of those, and then you can just choose whichever ones you prefer the best, and we also created that Angelica flower. So I hope you enjoyed that preview from my upcoming course. For that free clickable resources list and some other information about the upcoming course, just click on the link in the video description. You'll have everything you need. If you're an every Tuesday subscriber, which there's also a link to, you will get an email the day that it opens as a reminder. So just a heads up about that. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.